Hello and welcome. This is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and in this week's training we're going to be creating a mobile work order manager from scratch. We're going to show you how to sync your applications with your mobile phone to create an incredible work order management system that you can use in any company. We're going to do all that without any third-party applications other than the free Dropbox account and Excel mobile. It's going to be a great training, so let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really happy to have you here, and I appreciate you joining me each and every week. If, of course, you have not yet subscribed, now is a great time to do that, and make sure you click on the notifications icon bell. I bring you these free, comprehensive training where we create amazing solutions using Excel and VBA that you can use in any way you like within your company, or of course within your freelance jobs, or create and sell these applications. In fact, if you want to learn how to create and sell your own Excel applications, I've got an amazing mentorship program where I am taking you through step by step how to create an Excel accounting application, a comprehensive application. We're going to cover invoicing, inventory, chart of accounts, dashboards, share and sync. So if that's something you want to learn how to do that on your own so you can have the freedom to work anywhere you like around the world, I'm going to bring you through that step by step in the mentorship program. So have a look at that. You can find that, of course, at My Excel Mentor online. You can do that, myexcelmentor.com. Have a look at that, see if that's something you enjoy. All right, let's get started. We've got a lot to cover. As you can see, we've got a blank Excel application in front of us. Nothing on this sheet other than the fact that I've named it. So we're going to do everything from scratch. So I wanted to take you through step by step. I know you love these trainings. Please keep in mind that every once in a while, especially when I do these live trainings, there might be something, a slight issue or issue in the code when I'm doing the training. So make sure you download the free application using the links in the description below. Each and every video, I give these applications away absolutely free. So make sure if you run into any issues, you can compare my application with your current application with the video, because I'll always include an update. If there are any issues, I'll make sure to include those fixes and issues, updates on the downloaded version. All right, so let's get started. I want to create a work order manager. In fact, it's going to be a mobile work order manager. So let's get started on the design. And basically what I want to do is give the user the ability to create work orders and send those work orders out to a mobile application. So as we always do, I want to save the first two columns for admin, and we can eventually hide those columns. So we're going to color those columns probably down to, let's say, row 35 or 36, just bringing it down. These columns are going to be saved for our admin purposes, and you'll eventually hide them. So what I want to do is I want to just color, let's say, the first three here. I'm going to add some specifics in those a little bit later on. That's only for the admin use, so eventually you'll hide these two columns. And we're going to give it a title here, Mobile Work Order Manager. So that's the title I want to give it a little bit of a different look on the field. So let's go all the way to O, and then I'm going to format these. I'm not going to spend too much time on formatting it. Going to give it a basic format and just look and feel, so nothing too complex here. Just to give it, so you can see, I'm going to give it a fade out using two colors here on the top row, and then the bottom, and then the row below that, we'll give it a subheading, format the cells, and just the fill effects of a little bit lighter of a colors. So we're going to use this light blue here. Okay, so we formatted this, and now I'll give it a font title. We'll stretch this out from, let's say, C to L. I'm going to merge and center those to give it a nice title. Increase the font here, something a little bit larger, and go to Calibri and maybe italicize and bold. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We'll putting some icons a little bit later on. I'm going to color these fields a light blue, so that gives us a basic fade and background. That's fine. Now I want to also create it's going to be relatively simple, but let's start out with an order ID, maybe in D3 order ID, because I want to track the order ID as well. And I also want to have customer, and then I want to have a status. I want to know the status of a work order. So those are important. Also, maybe I want to know who it's been assigned to. That's really important because we may have different employees. So I want to know who it's been assigned to. Let's put over here, assigned to, and then also want assigned on. I want a date and time. and then completed on. I also want to know it's been completed on, so the work order. That's important. And also I want to give it some fields, a little bit larger fields. We use merge and center on these specific fields so that we can easily enter enough information. We were going to want to have enough information. So we'll merge and center those and left justify those. And then I'm going to right justify these here. So it gives it, so we can see how it's coming together. And I want to give it a format. Let's format these cells and give it a border. I'm going to use this blue border here, and then we'll go outline here, and then I'm going to use the dash, that's for the right. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the left here. So we're going to hold the control down, selecting multiple fields, right click and format those cells. And again, just using the same color, but this time we're going to go the solid line border on the around. Okay, so we get an idea, and we'll add these. And okay, so we've got a little bit of an idea of how it's coming together, but I also want to know the requested work details, and I want to know the work performed. So let's add that in here, and we'll start, let's say on 9. I'll merge and center this. So I want to know request, let's merge and center this and merge and center this. So we're going to have here, we'll call this requested work details, so we'll have a larger space for that. And then work performed. So what the employee is going to do is they're going to take their mobile application, they're going to enter what work they performed, and we're going to bring that right back into this application. So work performed. And I want a larger area for this as well, so we can go down to say 13, and then also the same thing here. So that way we have larger areas, and then what we're going to do is merge and center this, left justify it and put it in the top, and also color it, give it the white color. Okay, so we can see, and then also I want to give some borders around here. So we're going to, sorry, it's off the screen, format those cells, right click, same color border. We're going to surround it with the outline color and then use the dotted line on the middle. All right, so now we can see our work order come, but we also want to add some buttons in there, and we're going to add a table in there as well. So I think our table should start probably on row 16. So let's add in our table, because I want to select from the work orders. Well, order ID assigned to customer, and then assigned on status. We need to know the status, of course. We also want the completed on, requested work, and the work performed. Okay, there we go. Now we got it. Let's highlight those and update those columns so we can get a little bit expanded. Okay, good. So we have to see, so this is going to be the top of our table here. So let's format it accordingly. I'm going to scroll up, right click, format those cells, and give it a little bit of fill, same type of color, fill effects, so that we have the same theme and consistency throughout. We'll give it a color like this, and then we'll make the font bold here so we can stand out. Okay, so now we can see we just want to actually we add borders around that. And we'll give it a border of that same blue color, all the way borders around so we can see. All right, great. So now we see our tables starting to come together. And down here, I'm going to put all of the data in here, all the data, and I'm going to bring down this blue color. Let's bring this down a bit. And also this one, I want to surround the table with this blue color so everything's consistent. Okay, great. So we have that covered now, and we can now move on to the table. So we're going to format our table. Let's put our borders. I'm not going to go down forever, but you may want to. Okay, so we'll format those cells and then add a border on that as well. And then I'm going to add an inside border of a dotted line and then a solid line on the right. Okay, so that gives us an idea. And I also want to add conditional formatting on these. So I'm going to manage row because I want alternate rows to give a color. So I'm going to use a formula, and we'll use the mod equals mod. I have that on automated text because I use it so often. So mod row beginning and end parentheses comma 2 equals 0, and I'll give that a light blue color. So fill color about this, but a little bit lighter. So we're going to go into more colors and just make it a little bit lighter. That'll give us alternating row colors, which will help us differentiate the data. And I also want to do one other thing. Now let's set this up. I want to know if it's a new work order or not. So we're going to new work order. So this is going to be true or false. Let's put it false for now. And actually put it true for now. And let's put it selected row. I want to know the selected row. when we select a row, I want the work order to load above. So we can do that. Let's just put 18 for now. And I also want to know the next ID. Remember, having work order, so next ID, I'm going to put that here, and it's going to formula. So we have the order IDs here, and I want to know all the order IDs. So we're going to put this, for example, if I have 1, 2, 3, I want a named range for those work order IDs, and that's going to help us keep track of the work order and also know the next work order IDs. So that's really important. So how do we do that? Let's just create a named range on that. Formulas, name manager, new, and we can just call it order ID. That's fine. And we'll make it a dynamic, so we're going to use offset. You can use index for non-volatiles. Well, so this is a small table, so we'll just use offset. Sheet 1D, we don't want that. We're going to increase the range, but D17 is fine. I just copied that, comma, 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 count A. What are we counting? We want to count all the ones from, let's say, 9999. Okay, so we want to count all the text. So comma 1. That's going to hold out, tab back in, and make sure the dancing ants cover our data, which it does. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to find the next ID, because anytime we have a new order, I want to put that next order here. So how do we find that? We can use the max. You've seen me use it before. Max of what? Actually, let's start it out with if error equals, in case you have no data, if error max, what is the max order ID? Of course, the one we just enter. But we don't want the maximum, we want the maximum plus 1 because we want the next one. But what if it's nothing? What if there's no data in here? Well, then I want to start it off at 1. There would be an error if there's no max, right? So if there's an error, if there's no data, if there's no data at all, delete that. It's going to default to 1, which is what I want. So that's automatically going to set the first order to 1, which is exactly what I want. Okay, let's add some buttons into that. We also need that. So let's insert a picture. I've got some saved here to make it easier. So we'll add those and click insert. And then I'll just set the height and to 0.2 so that they're all about the same size, except one of them is going to be a little bit larger. Move them over here, and then I want an icon for here called mobile work order. So let's add that icon here. Gives it a nice icon. And then I'm going to create buttons. So what I want to do is I want a new work order, I want to cancel new, I want to save, delete, and I'm also going to refresh the data because I need to bring in the data from mobile. So I'm going to have several buttons here. Let's create those buttons now. Insert shapes, and we'll insert just a rounded rectangle, something like this, and give it a height of, let's say, 0.25 and 1.4. That should be sufficient. I give it a format, something like this, blue, and also I want to right justify that because I want the icon on the left, and then I want it in the middle. So let's call this new work order. Okay, and then let's duplicate these. We'll have one for cancel, one for save and update, one for delete, and one for refresh. Okay, so we got all those buttons, and they're not all going to be, and then I'm going to move all these to the top, right? Because we just created new, so I'm going to take these, all these, format them, and then bring to the front because I want them on top of the button. So that's kind of an important step. This is the selection. I have that on shortcut. Okay, so let's update. So I'm going to refresh here. I want, let's say, called check and update. Because I want to check and update. I want to look for any mobile, any work orders that have been updated by maybe outside staff. So check and update. Okay, let's format that and align it in the middle. That looks good. And then we're going to group it, and then I'm going to create a name for it. Check, just call it check update button. And that one's always going to be visible, so that's fine. We can put that about here. Well, I'll place it in a moment. And then I want to delete work order, so let's add that button here. So we got delete, let's just say delete to save some space, W-O. And we'll put the delete right here, and then we can shrink the button a little bit, zoom in to get the middle, and bring it over here a little bit. Okay, so we have the delete. Let's center that and align it to make it look nice. Align the middle and then group it, and then put delete work order button. Okay, we have that. That's only going to show for existing, not new, so we need to make sure. And then I'm going to use this one for the save and update work order. Let's call it save or update work order. That's fine there. And then I'm going to use this check mark for that. All right, and bring it a little bit. Okay, so that's nice for that button. We have that about centered. Hold the control, group them, and give it a name, save update button. Okay, so we have a name now. We have two more actually. Cancel new. Cancel new. In case we're in the new mode, we want to cancel that. Bring it over here. That's only going to show up for the cancel, and bring it down here. And then we'll give it this icon right here. That's going to cancel new. So you see how our form is starting to come together and giving it a nice look. Okay, so we can group those, and I'm going to call this cancel new button. Try to keep the same theme. Make sure we title everything. And then we have the last one we have is new work order. So we'll bring this over here, this icon. Again, format a line into the middle, group them, and give it a name. New, everything has a name, new work order button. Okay, so now we have new work order button, and we can bring this out a little bit small. Okay, so now we have new work order button. We can zoom back out to 100% so you can see where we're at. Save and cancel new. Now, save or update's always going to be visible. New work orders and cancel new are not going to be the same. In other words, they're not going to be at the show at the same time. Cancel new is only going to be displayed when we have a new work order. However, new work order is only going to be displayed when we have an existing. So these two buttons are never going to show up at the same time. Therefore, well, we can just put them right on top of each other, and that way only one's going to show up at the same time, so they're not going to be there. Delete work orders also only going to show up for new work orders, so we can put that here for existing, and check work orders. So we have those. Updating them, we can draw around them and make sure they're all centered. All right, we'll make sure they're okay. So now we've got all the buttons. We're ready to go, and let's take a look at what else we need to do. We also need to have a shared folder. I need to know the location of the shared folder, so we can put that. Let's just put that in, let's say, M and N3 shared folder. This is going to be the folder where our work orders are going to go. So shared folder, and I'm going to put a space there. And I also want to know the list of users. Let's just say Fred, Lisa, and Sally. Okay, so we've got a list of users because I want a list right here. We'll just create a basic list here. That's fine. And I want the shared folder here, so we'll color that white and give it a border. So we know I'm just going to paste it in. I'm not going to have a browse button because I've done that a lot of times and it's kind of basic. So it's kind of just easier, especially on these live trainings where I'm doing this live. I want to make sure that we get all the features in. Somebody complained that my videos were too long. My videos are not short. If you're looking for short videos, maybe not. But I want to. We've got really complex problems, so I'm going to create comprehensive solutions to those complex. So that's my videos are always going to be that way. I'm definitely different in that sense. So hopefully you like it because I always really want to give you tons and tons of value. That's the idea behind these videos. Okay, so we formatted. We've got a list of users. And then let's create, we've got assigned to, we can increase this a little bit. Don't have a lot of space there. That looks a little bit better. Okay, so assigned to, this is going to be a list of users. So we can do data and data validation. We'll just keep it simple here. I want a list here, and the source is going to be these list of users right here. Fred, Sally, Lisa, and Sally. Okay, so we've got that. I also want a shared folder location. I've got a folder location in my Dropbox work orders. I'm just going to use that, and I'm going to copy that location, and I'm going to paste it right in here into N3. So N3, that's going to contain our location. So that's fine. N3 is where we want to put all those work orders that we're going to send out to the employees. Very important because they need to get their work orders in their phones, fill those work orders out, and then get back to, and then it'll automatically come back. So it's really going to be cool. Okay, so we have that. We've got the order ID. We've got a customer. And we also want to add some data mapping in here. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to also create a template. So let's call this enter work order. Enter work order. And what I want to do is I want to create a template and then send that template. I don't want to send this to the individual users. I want to create a really small work order template, something very basic. And then I want to send that to them in a separate sheet. Of course, it won't contain macros because on mobile, you don't want to have any macros. You can't, that won't work. So we're just going to create a very basic sheet for them to enter. And I'm going to put that right here. We'll call that work order, call this sheet work order template. And basically what this sheet is just going to be a list of the same fields, but in a little bit different format. So the first thing I want to do is create a title for that. Let's just say work order. Okay, so it's going to give it, and it's just going to be 2 columns. It's going to be really basic, and that's the whole point. I want this really basic because I don't want anything too complex, especially for the mobile, because our end users are going to have to enter that data on inside their phones. So we got to keep it really basic and simple. And then the same fields that we have here: order ID, customer, status, and assigned to, and assigned on, and completed on. So we want all those fields, and I want to put them in here. I'm just going to drag them right here now, and then we'll move them according to how we want them. So we'll put order ID, customer, and status up here. And then I'm going to put, and that's okay, I'm going to put assigned to, assigned on, and controlled. I'm going to put those here. So we have that. And then I want to put the requested work details here. So we'll do that. And I also want in, let's say 13, I want the work performed. So I'm going to merge and center those. So that means the requested work, I'm going to copy that, and I want to put the requested work details right here, and we don't need that one. I'm just going to create a 2 column, so merge and center, and then just these 2 is fine. And then also I want to do the same thing for so that they can enter whatever work they perform. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'll update it. I want to put that right here. And again, just 2 columns, so that's fine. Merge and center these 2 columns. That gives them the ability to enter just a little bit of data so they can put their information in. And then I'm going to go 4 rows for each of them. Merge and center this, left justify, update, and then that should be fine. Add some borders around here and here. I want to keep it simple. Format those cells. I'm going to go off and scroll up. Right click, format those cells, give it a little bit of border. Same theme, same basically idea around, and then the dotted line in the middle. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing. This is going to be a very basic which is the whole point, so that on their phones they can see it easily. They'll get this, they'll fill the information in, and then they're going to update it, and all they have to do is change it, and then our application will work. Okay, so we have order ID, customer, status, assigned to, assigned on, and completed on. They'll put in the completed on, and they'll put in the work performed. That's it. That's all I want to do. Let's save this. Okay, so basically what I want to do is take whatever work order information is in when we save it or update it on new. Also, I want to give it a status. The status should be a drop down list, and it should be something like open, pending, and closed. So let's go into the data validation and hard code this. 3 different statuses. It's going to be a list. So we want open. New work order is going to be open. Open. Pending. Pending is when they submitted the work order, but it hasn't been closed yet. And then close. So those 3 statuses are going to be helpful as we code. So we have those options here. And it's going to start at an open. Okay, so we have order ID requested. We're going to add some data mapping here. Why do we need data mapping? Well, I need to know order ID. So let's add some. I want the template data mapping. And I also want the work order list. So that means that I want to map this data to this particular, we could use links, but in this case, I'm going to use data mapping. So I'm going to link all this information to this, but I'm not going to use links because we're not sure. Data mapping is a little bit easier in the code. So let's do that. So the best way to do data mapping here, like let's say I want to map the template. I'm just going to take a screenshot using my screenshot software, and I'm going to copy and make sure to include the columns and the rows. Then I'm going to copy this picture that I just took, and then I'm going to paste it right in here. Not this one. I'm going to paste it right in here because this is where I want to do the data mapping. So this is going to help me and bring it up a little bit. So now I can see the data mapping. Now I know that work order ID, right, is going to be B2. I know that the assigned to is going to be B5. And I also see the customer is going to be B3. So we just continue on this. I'm going to continue on to this, and I'll do it all so you don't have to watch me. Okay, great, we're done. So what I've done is I've just mapped this data on both the template sheet and the current sheet. So you see E3 is the order ID. J3 is the assigned to. So you see each one is mapped, customer is located. So I've mapped all that. Now we can get rid of this. So now that they're all mapped, remember, you can hide this. All we need to do to hide this is just change the font here, right here, and just change it to the same color as the background. That's going to hide all the mapping, and you can lock those down. And so your end user would not see this once we change it, but I'll keep it open for now so that we can see it. All right, so I also want to use conditional formatting. I want to know the selected row. When user selects a row, I want that to be highlighted in a different color. So we can do that. Let's just highlight the entire table as we have it and add some conditional formatting. And I want to add a new rule, and it's going to be based on a formula. And what is that formula? It's going to be equals whatever's in B5, which is the selected row, equals row, and then open and close parentheses. And I want to give it a specific format. What is that format? I'm going to give it a contrasting format. So I'm going to give it a font of white and bold, and I'm going to give it a fill of a dark blue. So a fill effects, I'm going to give it a dark blue, something like this and this. This is going to be a very contrasting color like this. And click OK and OK. So it's going to give it a white font with blue, and it's going to color whatever line. So as we change this line, it's going to give it. And now the idea is when we select a work order from here, it's going to display in the table above. So we can do that as we build out this code. Okay, so soon we're going to start programming some VBA. We're just about ready. We've have almost everything completed on our template. We've got our template here. We've got our work order. Now we're ready to add in some VBA. We want to be able to save and update the work order. We want to cancel new, check for updates. We're going to add all that in. The first thing I want to do is when I make a selection, I want to load that work order. So let's run in the load work order. Well, before we can load it, we also need to save it down to the table. So let's create some macros on that. Into the developers, Visual Basic. If you don't have the developers tab, you can locate it here under the options and look into the customize ribbon and just make sure developers selected there. There's a shortcut of Alt F11. It will also get you there. As you can see, we have 0 modules, 0 macros here. So let's create something like that. We're going to create insert a new module here by right-clicking insert, and we always want to give it a name. We don't want to leave it at the default name. So click on the properties here. I'm going to scroll this over and reduce the size of this. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing. And we'll call this work order save load max, just something different. And then I also want another one that we're going to create while we're doing it, insert module. And this one we'll call this check update. So give that a property, check update Mac. That's fine, because I want to check for updates. I want to look in the folder, in the shared folders, and see if there's any updates, if my workers on the field have made any updates on the work orders, and bring that into this. That's what I want to do. So work orders save and load, that's what we're going to start on. So we want to save. The first thing I want to do is create a work order. So let's create a sub. I want to do work order save and update. This is going to be the same macro for both saving and updating. So all we need to do is do that. And so let's start creating this macro. I wanted to mention the work order row. I need to know what row and the column. So those are both important, as long, and the column too, work order column, because we have data mapping, so we need that long. All right, also I want to know who it's been assigned to. We're going to be creating a mini workbook, and that mini workbook is going to go without any macros. It's going to go in a shared folder, in that Dropbox folder. What I'm going to do is in this work orders folder, I'm going to create a folder for every user. That folder is going to be shared with the end users, and I'll show you how to do that once we get into it. But so that way they can access their own work orders. Each individual employee on the field can access their own work orders in their own folder, so that they can update those work orders, save them, and then they'll come back to you. So it's a really great training. All right, so we also need to dimension who it's been assigned to. So dimension assigned to as a string, and I also need to know the shared folder. Where am I going to put that template? Shared folder as string. And also the file name as a string. We need to set a specific file name based on the work order number and the work order. And that's it. Okay. And also maybe file path as string. File path as string. So, all right, we've got all that. And we're focused on sheet 1. So with sheet 1, that's what we're focusing on. And so the best thing we want to do is, first of all, I want to make sure before we save it, I need to make sure that we have our empty fields. It's got to have, of course, an order ID. It's got to be assigned to. So those are really, especially E3 and J3 must have values, and E5 also as well. We also want to make sure that there's a customer. So there's certain things that we want to make sure that all have values. So let's take a look and put that in there right now. Check to make sure there's no blank values. If dot range, right, we've already covered sheet 1, so we don't need to add that in. J3 equals empty, or what else? We've got a few more, so let's copy and paste this because there's a few more. J3 or J5, right? We want to make sure, actually, it's also got to be, we need to make sure it's been assigned to. We can't if it's not been assigned to. And so J3, and also customer, maybe that's not too important, but assigned on, that's very important. So we'll go with J3 and J5. In fact, let's hold down the control, click on these 3 fields, and let the user know that they're required by adding a specific color to blank field. So home, and then conditional formatting, new rule, and it's going to be based on cells that contain blank values. So blanks here, if they're blank, I want to color them yellow. That's going to help users know that they need to add in those fields there. So, okay, so we've got that. So now as they add in specific IDs like this, they're going to know automatically that it's been assigned to a specific, so that way they can easily fill in the information. As soon as they add information, it's going to change the color, which is a really nice feature. Okay, so let's double check those. Again, that's E3, J3, and J5. So we have J3, E3, or, and then we also have J5, or J5. So those 3 must also be filled in. Let's close this. Then what? So again, let's go over that. If J3 equals empty, or E3 equals empty, or J5 equals empty, then what? Message, we need to alert the user, message box, please fill in the required fields. Exit sub. Okay, we can't go further unless those fields are actually entered. So that's very important. Okay, let's just double check that again. E3, J3, or J5. Okay, so good, we've got that covered. So now we can continue on. Now, assuming that they have filled in the required fields, we can continue on with the macro. We also want to make sure that we have a shared folder location. That's really important. What is the shared folder? We have to put the template somewhere. In this case, it's N3. We want to make sure that N3 contains a value, so we want to make sure it's not empty. So if dot range N3 equals empty, then message box, please add in a shared folder location. Okay, exit sub. Okay, so we have that covered. Now we've got the required field covered. Now we can move on. Also, now we really need to determine, is this a new work order or is it an existing work order? And we have the difference here in B4. If B4 is true, it's going to be a new work order. Otherwise, it's going to be an existing. So we can add that in right now. If dot range B4 dot value equals true, then what? And if, and then else. Both those conditions. Existing work order or new work order. New, so we can different new work order. Okay, so now that we've defined that, now because we need to get the row of the work order, I need to know the row. If it's a new work order, we can create a new work order. Work order row equals, what's going to equal dot range, D is our first column, D 99999 dot end XL up dot row plus 1, right? That's going to get us our last row of the value, but plus 1 is going to be the first available row. So first available row. That's if it's new. But what if it's an existing? Well, if it's existing, that row is automatically going to be based on our selected row, and that's going to be right here into B5. So then we could say the work order row is equal to dot range B5, right? B5 for our existing rows. And we'll just call that existing work order row. Okay, so we've defined it. So this way, based on the row, we can set it's a new. The rest is going to be relatively the same, regardless if it's new or existing. So we can use the same code, new or existing. And all we're going to do is run a specific loop from a specific column to column. So we're going to run it. These columns are column 4, right? I want to start here and go all the way to here. So what column is this? This is column 4 in D. And what is this last column? In K. What is that column is? That's column 11. So we're going to run a loop from column 4 to 11. And what I want to do is I want to take all of this information here and I want to put it not only down here into whatever row is concerned, but I also want to put it in the template. So I want to put it here as well. So we can use 2 different lines of code to add that, but a single loop to do both. So let's write that code. So for our loop, remember, work order column equals 4 to 11. Next work order column. Okay, so we got 2 lines of code actually that we're going to be enter. The first one is on the sheet 1 dot cells. And what are we going to add in? Work order row. We know the row and we know the column. Work order column dot value equals, what is it going to equal? It's equal to dot range. And we want to know the range. What is the range? It's going to be dot cells 15 dot work order column, and I'll explain that in a second, dot value. Okay, so let's just take a look at this. What is here? What is right here? 15 work order column. It's going to loop through and look at this. In 15 here, it's E3 or it's J3 or it's E5. So it's going to take whatever is in E3, it's going to place it right here in this column. It's going to take whatever's in J3, place it here. We've gone over this before, but if you haven't seen my videos before, that's how we do it. We use data mapping for that. Place values in work order row, okay? Next up, I also want to add them to the template. That's of course on sheet 2, right? So this time we're going to do sheet 2 cells, sheet 2 dot range. And then what is the range? In this range, the cell is going to be on row 14. Same thing, dot cells. What is going to be 14, row 14, the one above, and then work order column dot value equals, again, so let's just go with the sheet 2. What is the range on sheet 2? It's whatever is in here, whatever's in here. In this case, it's 14, right? 14, B2, B5, B3. Those are the same ones, B2, B3, B5, etc., etc. So that's how we do that. So let's continue on and finish up that. What does it equal? Again, it equals the same thing that we have here. But in this case, it's going to be 14. So let's just put it right here. Equals dot range cells. It's the same thing. It's the same thing right here. Let's just copy and paste this. It's quicker. Okay, so dot cells 15 work order column. So it's going to be equals the same thing. All we need to do is just, and this is going to be place values in work order template, because I'm going to create a workbook on that template, so we need to know that. All right, so now we have our loop complete. We have added all the data to the row below and that. But what do I want to do now? What I want to do is I want to set the work order. It's no longer a new work order, so we're going to set that to false, making sure dot range B4 dot value equals false. Why is it false? Because it's no longer a new work order. We've just saved it. So we want to make sure we set it to false. Again, here, right here, B4, no longer a new work order. I'm going to set that to false. So B4 equals false. Set new work order to false. Okay, so we've got that, but I also want to make sure we update the button sets, right? It's no longer a new, so I want to make sure our cancel new button is hidden, and I want to make sure that our new work order button is visible. So we're going to do those 2 buttons. Dot shapes, cancel new button, dot visible equals false. MSO false, and our dot shapes new work order button dot visible equals true. Let's double check that I've got the name right on that new work order button. Okay, so that's right. So now we've got our shapes updated. So good. So, but we've got to do more. I've got to do a little bit more. I want to make sure that B5 value equals the work order row. Why do I want to do that? I want to make sure that in case it's a new work order, we need to update it. Let's say we save this, so B5 must equal the work order row. I want to make sure that. So dot range B5 dot equals the work order row. So set that up to make sure of this. Okay, great. But what I want to do now is I want to create, in case it's a new, only for new or open work orders, what I want to do is I want to take this template right here and I want to put it in a shared folder so that that end user, so that worker on the field can get this work order inside their own Dropbox, fill it out, and then save it. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that with this specific work order. So let's just update this. We're going to call it create or update work order in the shared folder if status is open. Okay, if there's status, only if the status is open, right? Because I want to make sure that only new, if we're saving it or close it, we don't need to send it, but only if it's not status is open. So how do we know that? Well, let's take a look at that. If dot range, and what is our status? It's on E7, I believe. Here, our status is located on E7. If E7 equals open, then we want to update the work order. If E7 dot value equals open, then what? Then what I want to do is I want to create a template and I want to put it in that shared folder. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we can set a few variables. Assigned to, we need to know that is equal to J3 equals dot range J3. That's where we have our assigned to. And so that's going to give us our assigned to. We also want to know the shared folder location, shared folder. We know that that of course is N3. We just check to make sure it contains a value up here. So that's N3.range.N3. So we can put equals shared folder location. What else do we have? We also have our file name. I want to set that up. We need to set the file name. It's very specific. File name is going to equal work order, and then I'll do an underscore, and I want to make sure that it's a work order number, which is located in E3 is our work order number. Dot range E3. That's our work order number. So I want to give it a specific name. So this file name, that's going to be the file name, work order, and number. So it gives us a very distinct name. Okay, so we've got it. We want to make sure that they have an actual file name. For example, they're assigned to, I want to create a folder that's the same name as their user. I want to create a folder that's called Lisa if it doesn't exist. For right now, you see it doesn't exist. There's no work orders in here. So I want to make sure to check if it exists, if not, create it. So we can do that with this line of code right here. First, we want to check it if the directory, what is the directory? Well, I want to make sure it's going to be the shared folder and backslash and assigned to, and then we can do VB directory. So if that equals empty, then we know we need to create equals empty. If it equals empty, then we need to make the directory. How do we do that? MK directory. And what is the directory? All we need to do is do the same location and click assign to. So make directory right here. It's going to be basically this right here. That's the directory we're going to make. So basically we need to create a folder, which is make directory. So it's going to make this directory if it doesn't exist, just with that line of code. So let's put a note here. Create folder if it does not exist. Okay, great. So we've got that. So now we know we can create. Now we can create the whole file path. What is the file path? It is going to be the equals to the shared folder, which we've already defined. And let's just copy and paste this. And what? And this. And what else? And it's also the name, right? So we want to create and add a name on that, and the file name, and We need to add another backslash, another and here. And what is it? That it is the file name here. Okay, so now we have the file path. And now what I want to do is, in case it already exists, I want to delete it, because if it exists, it's going to create an error. So we got to check to make sure. So in case it on error, resume next, in case it doesn't exist. So we're going to kill, what are we going to kill? The file path. Actually, we can add on, I guess we can add it on here. And, right, dot, it's going to be an XLSX file, XLSX file. So we want to add that on. And then what we want to do here is kill the file path. Basically delete the file if it exists. So on error, go to 0 here. Okay, so basically what that's going to do is remove the file if it exists already, because I can't create it. Next up, what I want to do, I want to copy this and I want to create a new workbook. Basically what I want to do is I want to copy all of this, create a new workbook, and paste it in sheet 1. Because I want to take that workbook and then save it in their file. So we can do that with these lines of code. Sheet2.range, and that is basically A1 through B17 through B17 dot copy. I want to copy all that. Let's double check it. A1 through B17, copy that. So once we've copied that, we can create a new workbook. Workbooks dot add. All right, so that's going to create the new workbook. Now we can focus on that specific workbook, which would be the new workbook, active workbook, sheets. What sheet? We're going to focus on sheet 1. So we're going to use the index for that sheet automatically. Dot range, A1, I'm not going to use the value, dot paste special, and we're going to paste all. And that's going to work, but it's not going to paste the column. So I really want to also paste the columns. So how do we do that? We can do that with just another line of code. I also want to paste the column widths. Copy and paste this, and then XL paste column widths. Because I also want the exact same column. All right, good, we're done. So we'll want to save that. Active workbook dot save as, we already have the file path. File path. Okay, so it's going to save it as a file path. Perfect. And then we can close the workbook. Active workbook dot close. We've already saved it, so false. We don't need to save changes anymore because we just saved it. Okay, great. We also want to update the assigned onto the current date and time. I want to make sure that the timing is critical, so we're going to update to the exact same time. So where is that? I want to update basically column G, which is the assignment, to the exact time that it's been created. So even though we just did it, dot range, G and what? G and the work order row value equals now. That's going to set the exact same time, because basically what I want to do is I want to compare the current time with the time that the workbook's been saved, because as soon as the workbook save has a different time, that means the end user has updated it. So the timing is going to be perfect. So that's going to update the assigned on to the current date and time. Okay, good. So we also want to format those to date and time. So let's do that now. Okay, we got to put the and sign there. Okay, so now we've got our macro pretty much written. We'll test it out in just a moment. I'm going to take a look at this and update the formats. I want the assigned on, the completed on. I'm holding down the control plus all of these along with the completed on. I want date and time on all of those. So I'm holding down the control. I'm going to format, and then I'm going to go to the number format, and I'm going to go date, and I want also date and time. So scroll down here, looking for both the date and the time. Okay, that's going to be good. That's exactly what I want. So now let's add some information in, and we can now assign this button to the macro we just created. So click Assign Macro and click Work Order Save Update. Okay, so let's save this. Always save before we run macros in case I made a huge mistake. Let's see if we run into any bugs. That's a lot of code. So, wow. All right, let's take a look at what happened as we ran it. Let's increase this column, and we didn't put a customer in there, so we need to add that, but that's fine. Let's take a look. Here's the folder. The folder got created. Oh, nice, look. And we got a work order 1 that's been created automatically. Let's open that up. It's going to open up in Excel 2000. 16365, which is fine. So you can see here, basically it's pretty much the same, just the template. All we have is an XLS workbook with the template. That's exactly what I want. We didn't add the customer in, and that's fine. We didn't add work order details, so we can add that in now. So we're going to close that out, which is what I want. And as long as it's still open, we can update. So Fredders, and then let's say fix leaking sink. Okay, so now let's save and update that. It's going to also update that. So let's make sure it's updated. So as long as it stays open, it's going to update that template, which is what I want. And we can see here that fix leaking sink and the customer's been added. So we can assume that it's also been added to our template, which is just what I want. All right, great. So now we've got that set up, but let's focus on loading, because what I want to happen now is when I select here, I want these details to load automatically, and I also want to select new work order. But look, we expanded that column. Let's reduce that and show what we need to do. Is I want to actually make sure that we do not size. So let's update those buttons with that. I'm gonna select all those buttons, right click, go into the size and properties, and make sure that we're setting the properties to move but don't size. Okay, because we don't want those buttons to size. Okay, continuing on. So now that we have that, but I also want to load this work order, and I also want to click new work order and have all the information. So let's run those work orders now. And so here back in our work order save, we want to actually load the work order. So let's create a macro for that. And we're going to call that work order load sub work order load. This is going to be a relatively simple macro. And let's add an underscore so we can keep consistency. Okay, so again, we also need to dimension the work order row as long and the work order column as long. Work order column as long. Okay. These videos, when I create them from scratch, they tend to be a lot longer, so keep that in mind. You like when I create videos from scratch, but they are definitely going to be longer because we're creating it as we go. But at least you can see exactly how I do this. With sheet 1, of course, that's our focus. So we want a sheet. If we want to make sure then that we have an actual row, if we want to make sure that there is a row to load, if dot range B5 equals empty, then exit sub. Because if there's no row, no work order row, we can't load anything. Assuming B5 does contain a value, we can set the work order row equal to B5. So we can copy this and then just equal to B5. And then we'll set that as a work order row. Okay, so now that we have the work order row, we can again run our loop for work order column equals 4 to 11 again, just like we did 4 to 11, but this time it's in reverse. Next work order column. Okay, so now that we have our loop, we can do that. So, but this time it's reversed. Dot range, again, in this case, dot cells 15, remember it's coming from row 15, work order column dot value equals, and I'll go over this in a second, equals, what does it equal? Dot cells, work order row, dot work order column, dot value, update form. So all we're going to be doing in this case is we're updating our form. We're just doing the opposite. We're taking whatever's in this row here and we're updating the form. And it's going to be based on E3, J3. So whatever's in B, let's say D17, is going to put it in E3. Whatever's in E17, we are going to put it in J3, and so on and so forth. So that loads the form. So great. So now we got the loaded form. We also need to update the button sets too, because we want to make sure it isn't existing. It's no longer new. So we're going to hide cancel dot shapes, cancel. In fact, we could just copy these here because it's no longer new. So we've already created those. So we can just copy these and put them up here. So copy these two, same thing, exactly the same as we did before. And so now we've updated the button sets. So we've done that. That's pretty much it with load. But now we got to launch it. When do I want to run this? I want to run this when the user makes a selection change. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to enter the work order. What kind of selection change? It's a worksheet and selection change. So if not, but what is the range? What is the range? Well, I want to make sure two things. When they select a range, let's go back, maybe between D17 and perhaps K and then down, whatever the row is. But I also want to make sure that D contains a value. D must contain a value. So we can do that with the following code. D17 through, let's say, K99999. So we want to make sure the user makes a selection and what? And range D in the target row dot value must not be empty. Must not be empty. So because we have to actually load. So as long as those two conditions are met, then we can do something. What do we want to do? Well, the first thing I want to make B5 is the target row. Range B5 dot value, because that's going to set our row, equals the target row. And what else? I just want to run the macro work order load. So I'm going to paste that in. That's it. That's all we have to do. You're not going to see much now if we do it, but we can see if there's any issues or errors. Variable not defined, empty. I got to spell that wrong. Okay, so let's run it. Okay, so it looks good. There's no issues with the code. Although the reason that you can't see anything is because there's nothing changed. So if we delete this and then we click here, you see it comes back. Okay, so it's working just fine, just the way we want it. But we also have to have a new work order, delete work order, and check for updates. So let's do that now. Let's distribute these accordingly. Format, align, distribute horizontally so they're spaced correctly. Save our work. And continue on with our code. So what do I want to do now? I want to create a work order for new work order. When I click this button, I want the fields to be cleared out. I want to take whatever the next ID, put it in here. Whatever's the signed on, I want to actually put this default as whatever the date. And I want to make sure the status is open. So we can do that on new work order, set the defaults on that. So we can do that with some code. Let's update back in our work order save. We're going to call work order new, sub work order new. Okay, and we can add again with sheet 1. And then I want to set a bunch of fields to clear. Dot range. There's a lot of fields. So here I'm going to pause the video here a second and type those in because I don't want you to watch me type all that. It's going to be really annoying. So I've just typed in these. These are all the fields that we need to clear, all these fields. So it's just, there's no reason for you to watch me type in all those fields. It takes a little bit of time. Okay, so what that does is it clears all associated fields. All right, so next up, what do I want to do? I want to set the buttons. So dot shapes, new, in this case, let's just copy and then we'll reverse the true and the false on here. So these, in these case, I want to, the cancel new should be MSO visible equals C true, and this one's going to be false, right? It's no longer, it's now a new work order, so we want to hide this. So we want to update those buttons accordingly. I also want to set B4 to 2 dot. I want to set to make sure B4 equals true, new work order to true. And then I want to set some default. The new work order number dot range E3 is going to get its value from where it equals our new work order dot range B6. B6, I'll show you that in a second. New work order number. Remember we created here in Excel, we created our next in B6. So I want to take whatever our next is and put it right here into E3. So we can do that. All right, so now we've got our new work order. I also want to set the default E7 to open. Dot range E7, which is our specific status, equals open. New work order should be open. Set new work order status to open. And then next up, also I want to put in the current date and time into J5. Dot range J5 equals now. Set current date time. Okay, also what's up? I want to just maybe select something. So we've got now J5 and I want to select, give them at least make sure they select this. So we'll select J3 just to start that out. So dot range J3 and then select first field. Okay, good. So we've got that. That's pretty much it. That's all we need to do in this macro. Now we can assign it. Work order new. So we just go in here, we select the group and hold right click, assign macro, and then work order new. Okay, and let's run that, see if there's any issues with that. Okay, it looks good. That's good. Cancel is too big of a button. So let's zoom in and reduce that here because we increased the column. That's why it got increased. Okay, but that looks good. It looks right. That's what I want. Although delete, we should really hide delete. We can't delete. So let's make sure to hide that for new, right? We can't delete it if it's a new work order, so we can hide that button as well. So let's do that right now into there. And we also want to do dot shapes, delete work order button, dot visible equals MSO false. And then of course we're going to set that to true for existing. So once we load it, we're going to set that to true equals true. Okay, so that puts the delete visible on load and also on save probably. Let's make sure we do it on save also, saving, not just loading, but saving as well. Bring it all the way up here and add it in right here. Okay, so we've got the 3 buttons. Okay, so, and also cancel new, save work order. Okay, good. So let's save this new one. Gotta add a new, let's add Fred and customer John Jacobs. And John has a burnt down house. So that's going to be a lot to fix. Okay, so we're going to save and update that one, and it creates a template. Looks good. It saves it down here. Work order template, good. And we'll check our folder and click on the work orders. Now we have a new folder for Fred and the template's been created there. Perfect. Okay, great. So we have that there. Excellent. Now we almost finished out with our work orders here. I know it's a long training. Let's move on to just finish up. All we want to do is delete work order, and we've got new orders. So let's just run a little bit of code for delete and cancel new. Those two are really simple, really quick, and really easy. So let's scroll down here and put in sub work order delete. And then what do we want to delete? Well, first of all, I want to make sure that B5 contains a value. If sheet1.range B5.value does not equal empty, then what do I want to do? Then I want to set the work order. Let's dimension the work order. Home dim work order row as long. Okay, and I'll make sure that. Okay, so now that we have the work order row is going to be equal to whatever's in B5, and then all we have to do is delete that. Equals to work order row. Okay, so now all we need to do is basically take and copy and just delete it. So we didn't define sheet 1, just a few lines of code, so we'll do it right here. Sheet1.range work order row and what? And then parentheses, quotation marks, colon, quotation marks, and work order row dot entire row dot delete. All right, that's it. That's all we need to do. You can add in a message box if you want to say, are you sure you want to delete? I just didn't because we're going to be a long training already. And then I want another one. Also want cancel new. Sub work order cancel new. And what do I want to do? That I just want to select something in the shell. If sheet1.range D17, which is our first row, D17 dot value does not equal empty. I'll show you that in a second what that means. Then sheet1.range D17 dot select. All we're going to do is select the first row in the table, and that's going to load whatever the first column is. Select first row in table. So all that's going to do is load it automatically if this is not empty. So now when we, let's just say we click a new work order and we want to cancel new, right click, assign macro, work order, cancel new. So now assuming it's not empty, which is not, we just click cancel new, it's going to load the first one automatically. Delete the work order, right click, assign macro, work order delete, click OK. Let's click the second one, delete work order. Okay, that works great. Okay, except I really need to clear this out also. So we should load the one above. Let's do that. Let's select the one above on that. On delete, what I want to do, if work order row is not equal to 17, right? I want to make sure. Then what I want to do, I want to just basically do what I want to do right here. Then dot range D and the work order row -1 and the work order row -1 dot select. So we're going to select the one above it, dot select. And what that's going to do is automatically select whatever the field is above so that we no longer display the work order. So let's add one, create a new work order, and create this. And then the customer test, I just want to create it, and then save and update. That's going to save it. Now when I delete this one, I want it to select the first one. Delete. We need to define sheet 1, because we didn't do that before. Okay, I think that worked just fine. So now it's selected it. Perfect. So now no longer here. Okay, good. So we've got that. We've got all of the buttons. Now we just need to add one macro for check and update. And what do I want to do? Basically, what I want to do is I want to check the shared folder for any updates of that. Because if the end user has made an update, I want to know about that. So let's run through that macro. Okay, and why do I want to do that? Well, what I want to do is I want to say if the work order time, if the assigned on time is different than this date modified time, that means the user made a change or made an update or completed this work order. So I want to check for that, and I want to take that information from the Dropbox and bring it back into here. So from their mobile phones, if they made an update, and I'm going to show you very soon, if they made an update, I want to know, and I want to bring the completed on, and I want to bring the work performed. I'm going to bring this data back in from the updates they made. So we need a work order so we can assign a work order to check for updates and see if they made any changes on those. So let's write that work order now, and we're going to put that called in check for updates. So let's create a work order, sub check and update work order. And what that's going to do is going to check that folder, look for any signs, and going to run a loop. So we're going to run a loop through all of our work orders here, and let's create all of our work orders here to see if the completed on time is different. So we can do that with just a little bit of code. So we're going to dimension the work order row as long, and I also want to do the last work order row as long. Why is that? Well, because I want to go through all the work orders. In fact, let's create a new work order here, and let's just call it Jerry, and assigned to anybody, Lisa, and open test work. Okay, and so we've created that. Now let's just save that. So now we have more than one, so now we have at least two. So what we're going to do is going to loop starting at 17 and going to the last one, in this case 18. I'm going to loop through all those. I want to see if they're open, and if they're open, I want to know if the assigned on date has been changed at all inside the folder. If the modified date here, let's take Lisa's folder here, if any of these are updated. Right now this is 7:17 a.m. on work order 2, right? So you see it's 7:17, but as soon as it changes, as soon as this date changes, we know there's been an update. So we want to bring in those updates. It's going to be based on that change. So that's the code that we're going to write. So we need to do it the last work order row. We're going to loop through those. I also want to know the assigned on, dimension the assigned on. That's going to be as date. And of course the change on, all right? If it's been changed on as date, we need to know that. So we're going to define both of those. And then dimension the file path as a string. And also we want to dimension the workbook, also existing work order. Dimension the work order manager workbook. That's the existing workbook as a workbook. I want to define the current workbook, make sure that is. And then let's just set it. Set the work order manager workbook as or equal to this workbook. So because we're going to work with different workbooks, so we want to make sure we know which one we're working with. So set the work order manager workbook as this workbook. Okay, great. With sheet 1, we're focused on sheet 1. Thanks for your patience. I know it's a very long training, but it's comprehensive. So the last work order row, where we need to get the last row equals to dot range, and we'll use D999 end XLab as we always do. Dot end. Let's increase this to one more 9 because it could be a lot of work orders. End XLab up dot row. Okay, so we're going to get the last row, last work order row. Okay, so now that we've defined the last work order row, we can start to run our loop. For work order row equals, of course, it starts at 17 to the last work order row. So it's going to be the beginning of our loop, and we'll close it out, next work order row, and now everything's going to go in here. First, we need to check if it's open. If, what are we looking for? Again, we want to make sure, I only want to focus on open. So if H and the work order row equals open, then let's proceed. So if dot range H and the work order row dot value equals open, then we can proceed. We're only going to focus on the open ones. Closed ones don't matter. Then what do I want to do? Check only open status. Only open status work orders. That's what we're going to focus on. But next up, I also want to check. Now we're going to check if the file date. So let's do that. Let's set the assigned assign on. That's going to be a date and time, right? Equals G. Right? That's from G. Dot range G, and of course the work order row. Dot value assigned on date and the time. Okay, so we've got that. Now we got to get the file path. Let's add in the file path. Of course, that starts in N3. Remember the dot range N3 is our shared folder location, but we need to build out the file path a little bit more than that because I need to know the folder. And what? And the backslash. And of course, we also backslash, and we also want to know the user, right? Because that is also based on the assigned to, right? That file path is based on the assigned to. So it's based on whatever's in E3 because their folder name, right? Their folder name is also going to be Lisa or Fred. So it's based on that. So I need to add in that as well. So we can do that with this. And dot range E and the work order row. What else is there? We got to build it out, and there's more. So we also had another backslash here, and because we need to put in the file name. What is the file name? Well, the file name, if we remember correctly, it is going to be the work order underscore, and of course the work order number. Where's the work order number located? It's located in column D, and dot range D and the work order row. So let's build that out just so we know, right? We're basing it on D because it's also going to contain work order and then of course the order ID here, 1 or 2. So we need to build that out because that's going to help us, right? Because why is that? Because remember the name of the file is work order underscore and then the work order number. We're locating, and then we've also got to add XLSX onto it too as well because that's part of the entire file path. So we need to put that on. And dot XLSX. Okay, great. So now we built out the entire path. So now what we want to do is set the change on date. Change on, that's the file date, equals, here's a really cool feature, file date and time. I haven't used that before. What is the path? File path. That's going to tell us exactly the date and the time that was changed. So now we've set the change on, we know the change on date, we know the assigned on. Now all we need to do is run a little if then statement. If the assigned on date and time, assign on is less than the what? Then the change on, then what? Then we know it has been changed by the user. So let's look at that. So then we can do that. Then we can open that. Now I want to open that workbook and get all the information because we know there's an update to it. So workbooks dot open, and what are we opening? I want to open up the file path. I'm going to open up that workbook because there's been a change. So now we can focus on that with the active workbook. That's the one we just opened, workbook. What are we going to do with that? We're going to take some data from it. So now I want to add in work order with our current workbook, work order manager workbook. That's of course this workbook right here because we've already defined it. That's this workbook here. We've defined it. So now what I want to do is take that information and bring it into it. So dot workbook dot sheets 1, which is our first sheet, right? We know that dot range I and what? And the work order row dot value equals, what do I want to do? I want to bring in two things. I want to bring in the completed on and the work performed. So I want to bring in the completed on and the work performed. And I want to bring it, of course, from their workbook, but I want to bring it here from B7 and A14. That's not in this template, but in their workbook. B7 and A13. Bring in that information and put it right here. Put it here and here. So we can do that with the following lines of code. I equals active workbook dot what sheets, of course sheet 1 again, because we're sheet 1 from their template workbook, dot range K dot range B7. B7 is the completed on date dot value, okay, completed, right, B7, because that's the completed on date. So we're going to bring that right in, B7 right here, bring it in. Remember, this is the template. We're actually, let's open it up so you guys understand what we're doing. Let's open up that. This is actually the template file, the one that they're going to actually be updating. It's the same thing, B7, right? B7, and of course A14 from the template file. It's the same as our file, just so we know, just so we're clear with that. Okay, so we're going to bring in that line and also have to bring in one more field, but let's copy that. Let's copy that and then just make the modifications because that's a lot to type. So we also, the completed on and what was completed, the work performed. And of course the work performed is actually an A14. A14, and we're going to put that in, not in I, of course, we're going to put that in K. K, right? K in the work order row is where we want to place it, right in our table, right here in K, column K, work performed. Okay, so now that we've updated that, we've also updated that, great. So I'm done with bringing the manager. We've already brought, now we're done with the template. We've brought in the two fields that we want. So active workbook, we can close it now. Dot close. And then false. I don't need to save changes. So what do I want to do now? I want to actually take this file. We're done with this file, right? We're done with it. We've got all the information we want. I want to take it and I want to put it in an archive folder here. So at least we have a place for it. Put it inside an archive. But if the archive folder doesn't exist, I need to create the archive folder and place it there. So we're going to do that with the following lines of code. First, we need to check if there's an archive folder. If directory, what are we going to check? Okay, so let's pull the file path. And where's that file path? It's located in, let's copy this here so we don't have to retype it in. This, it's N3. Remember our path is located in N3. Dot range N3. That's our shared folder path. Dot value. So whatever's there, and well, we're looking for an archive. I'm looking for an archive folder and archive, something called archive. See if it's there. Archive. Does this exist? So .vb directory. If it's equal to empty, then we know we need to create it. If the directory work order, so if there's no archive folder, we need to create it. So then we just have to make the directory equals. Then what do we want to do? Make directory. What do we want the directory? I just want to make it right here. Basically, I want to take this and just create it. Make directory. Copy that, no comma. So we can just make the directory using that make directory, just like that. And what that's going to do is create an archive folder if needed. Okay, so now we've got the archive folder. So now we're ready to move I want to move that file to the archive folder. And we can do that relatively easy with something called name. Just using the name, we're going to basically rename the file with a new path. So file path, name as. So basically what we're doing is, here's the existing path, and then where's the new path. So we're going to rename it based on the entire path. So giving that the brand new name, new path actually, is going to give us the new location. So we can use that. So what is our new path? It is basically this path right here. This path right here. And then of course we're going to give it the file name. as that's work order manager archive. And what else? It's more than that. And then we got to add the backslash here. And then what do we want to do? And the directory. And I want to give it the name, of course, which is the directory of the file path. So that gives us the name. The directory gives it the file name. In this case, of course, the directory would be something like work order number 1 XLS. So this is the directory. This right here. This full path is the directory. So that's going to give it the name, and that's going to allow us to rename the file and put it inside the archive. And that is it right there. So then we're done with the workbook. Okay, great. That's going to do it. All right, we're set up. Let's just run this macro and see if there's any issues at all. Run this macro. Variable not, we got to define the file path up here. We got to make sure as part of a string. File path, let's rename that. There we go. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, all right, we got to actually add a space. Look, work orders have a space between the orders. So let's just put a space right here. Okay, so let's reset that and resume it. Okay, that works good. No more errors. We've got the space between our work orders now. Good. So, all right, now what we're going to do is now we've got all that working right. But now what I want to do is I want to show you on my mobile exactly how a user would interact with this and how it works. Since we're pretty much done, let's take a look and see how that works on the mobile. Okay, I'm using this application called App Power. It's a mirror. It's going to show exactly what is on my phone as I type on my phone. It's a free app. So this is my Dropbox folder here. So if we click on Lisa, we can see that we have 2 work orders. So from the field, we have 2. Now, if I click on work order 1 inside my mobile, we'll see it inside Dropbox, but we can't edit it from here. So we'll click on the edit. What that's going to do is open up the Excel application. Once it's open, we can then update it. So I can add in now a completed on date. So I'll double click on here. And then I'll just put in let's say a date here. Okay, so putting in a date and then enter that. And then I also want to put on the work performed. So let's just type in leak fixed, something small. Okay, and then enter that. Okay, so now that we have that, we can close out our Excel application and everything's been closed, closing work order. So it's going to close that. And all right, great. So now it's updated. So now we're done with the mobile. We fixed that. We've updated it. So we can move that out of the way. And let's take a look inside the Dropbox folder here under Lisa. And we'll see that now the work order is 1 has been changed to 7:38 a.m. So there's been a change. So if we see that this is modified on 7:38, and if we look in our application, work order 1 7:33. So we know there's a difference of time. So let's now assign the macro that we just created to the check and update. So it's check and update work order. So now let's click OK. And now I'm going to run the macro here. Running that macro is going to bring in the file, check and update, and it's already done. So we see now that we have it completed on. I didn't add the time on this completed on. And also leak fix. So it brought in the data from the mobile automatically. Just like that, we use the Dropbox shared folder. All right, I'm really glad I got to show you this. I know it's been a very long training, but I've got really amazing solutions, so I want to bring them all to you. I'm always so excited to bring you these new solutions. If you do like these free trainings, I've got actually 100 workbooks for just $37. So if you like that, I'll include the link down below. I'd appreciate to pick that up. We have created an amazing mobile work order manager, how you can sync mobile and create this amazing application from any computer and sync with the mobile so you can send out work orders throughout the world and have those come back to you. It's been a great training. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.